Welcome on into another news video. I'm Space Wizard Total War, and we've got some details about how some of the other Game 1 and 2 races are getting a slight rework going into the launch of the Immortal Empires beta. Getting right into the article, the first race getting some tune-ups is going to be the Vampire Counts. Everyone's favorite bloodsuckers were in a difficult place coming out of Warhammer 2, mainly relying on a devastating two-punch combo of free skeleton armies and the evisceration of their enemy with the Winds of Death. While it was a real power trip at times, it did eventually get a bit dry. Bone dry, you might say. On top of that, changes to systems like Winds of Magic and Warhammer 3 have had a heavy impact on the race, so the team spent time enhancing them in ways that help them stay fresh. As fresh as an exhumed corpse can be, at least. So, the headline? The free skeletons are gone. You'll still have ways to make them grave dirt cheap, but not to the same extent as before. We know this is a big change, one that might disappoint some people. But it not only distorted the Vampire Count's gameplay too much, but made much of the roster obsolete, particularly in conjunction with the reduced supply line penalties in Warhammer 3. To make up for the loss, we've made a whole host of other changes that we hope will more than make amends for it. Here's a look at some of the key changes. We're going to have across-the-board balanced changes to the roster, leadership increases to most units, adjustments to ethereal units, and the ability to recruit Mourn goals in a campaign if you own the Vampire Coast DLC. Oh, that'll be awesome. We'll have improvements to the Raised Dead pools, which will now offer better units by default and scale up with vampiric corruption, making them less reliant on battle sites. Oh, interesting. I guess we'll have to see exactly how the corruption will interact with the Raised Dead pool, if it's going to be purely on corruption, or if it's going to have to do with some of the researches and buildings you have as well. There's going to be a reshuffle of recruitment buildings, with many units now available earlier and more easily. Oh, that'll be awesome. And they'll have revamped tech tree, skill trees, and bloodline effects to give the race access to powerful new effects such as increased healing caps and extra winds of magic. Well, increased healing cap sounds crazy. As for individual lords, we've already highlighted some of the changes coming to the undead power couple, Vlad and Isabella von Karstein, in our dedicated factions blog, but don't worry, Manfred and the other Necromancer lords will have their time in the sun, moon too. So, Manfred von Karstein has moved to the Southlands, where he seeks the unholy books of Nagash. As the most magically gifted of the vampire lords, he also has received increased magic reserves, and his Master of the Black Arts ability now boosts his spell mastery by 25%. To complement his new starting position in the Haunted Forest, Helman Gorst now starts the campaign mounted on his corpse cart, and can acquire skills that enhance his aura abilities, granting powerful faction-wide buffs to zombies. If you want to drown the world in rotting flesh while watching from the back of your sweet ride, he is the legendary lord for you. And lastly, not to be outdone by his young upstart, Kimmler has also upped his game. His best bud Krell will now be a permanent summon by default, while Kimmler's skill tree serves to supercharge Krell's combat skills. Having Krell as a permanent summon by default is going to be fantastic. That's an awesome change. And then for the Lizardmen. We know that Lizardmen and Update together might generate some excitement, so we'll get the bad news out of the way first. The geomantic web is still pretty much the same, other than a few adjustments to reward you for fulfilling the great plan. We fully recognize that it's ripe for a more substantial update, and hope to find an opportunity to do so in the future. With that said, there's still a load of other changes coming for our scaly friends. We'll start with the Humble Skinks. As has long been requested, Tenenway now unlocks Regiments of Renown units by leveling up, and will be able to use his Sacrificial Pyramid to generate extra Blessed Spawning units. His chameleonic comrade Oxiata will be receiving new missions to hunt down and eliminate new demonic enemies who recently arrived on the Immortal Empires map, and his mission durations will now scale with campaign difficulty, making it much harder to thwart chaos if you choose to play at harder difficulties. Stalwart Saurus will also benefit from changes that help them take on the demonic hordes in battle. Their innate Primal Instincts ability kicks in earlier, granting them greater bonuses and no longer triggering their rampage. Both Saurus characters also get revamped Lord and faction effects to account for this, in addition to helping them develop their own playstyles. Rockgar will focus on creating a coterie of elite Saurus characters, with major buffs for Old Bloods and Scar veterans, while Gorok will enjoy new effects that lean into his defensive nature. While his unique right no longer makes Sauruses unbreakable, it now grants them barrier as well as immunity to hostile weapon effects like poison, a perfect boon for taking on a certain pestilent rodent. It grants them barrier, kind of like Thinch's Bear. That's going to be crazy. We will have to see if that's a permanent barrier, or I guess I would assume it's going to be more like a temporary one, probably about 30 seconds. Still very strong. As the premier magic wielders of the setting, the Slann, including Lord Croak, are getting skill tree tweaks to fit the new magic system in Warhammer 3, while gaining access to powerful effects like Barrier and increases to their Winds of Magic capacity. On top of that, Mazdamundi will also receive a whopping 50% increase to range on all his spells, benefiting for a frog of such continent-shifting power. Finally, Nakai will enjoy a variety of balance changes, including tech tree updates to boost his economy, as well as new and improved benefits from constructing temples to the old ones. He'll also benefit from some of the fundamental improvements to diplomacy that were introduced in Warhammer 3, notably improving how AI interacts with vassal factions. We will have to see how the vassal faction thing is actually going to play out, because his AI tends to be a bit brain dead. And next, let's turn to the Druki, who, in addition to being in a prime position to benefit from the new sea lanes, have seen big changes to their slaves mechanic. Previously, this was a feature that resulted in insane late-game economic performance with relatively little interaction from the player. As such, in Warhammer 3, slaves are now considered to be a faction-level resource rather than something you stow in a province. Slaves can now be spent at numerous buildings to generate income or invested in 3 powerful slave dictats who benefit a specific province. For a long while, the Druki has had a complicated relationship with Chaos, so the influx of demonic factions has led to a few notable changes. Morathian now gets unique interactions with Slaanesh Corruption and can even recruit Demonettes, while Malice's possession ability now allows for more frequent uses of Zarkan and interacts differently with the new corruption types. Last of all, Rakarth can now capture and tame a host of new beasts, including Sabertusks and feral bears. I'm really hoping Kislev gets access to the bears as well. Alright, let's talk cold, angry, and primed to raid. Norska has had a somewhat tumultuous entry into the series with their unique ability to construct outposts instead of regular settlements. That's one way to put it. Built on the foundation of the climate-locked occupations of Warhammer 1, this design did not make a graceful transition into Warhammer 2, where it was originally designed to grant them unparalleled flexibility. It instead became their greatest weakness. So if you take one thing home when you're done raiding these shores, it's the fact that Norska is now a regular occupation faction, with access to their complete building tree anywhere in the world. That is huge. They're just going to be an absolute normal faction. That's going to be awesome. Cannot wait to play Norska again. And while that is the big one, there are additional smaller changes coming to freshen up the race. Devotion to the gods. Like before, the players can dedicate the ruins of their enemies to one of the 4 dark gods in order to gain their favor. But there was always a massive disparity in the rewards given. As such, we've evened things out a bit. Full dedication to the Crow no longer causes an admittedly most impotent global plague. Rather, you will be joined by Burplesmirk Spewpit, the exalted great and clean one. Oh, that sounds awesome. Hopefully he is purple. He'd better be purple. Full dedication to the Hound no longer gives you access to the Iceforged Legion. Rather, you'll be joined by Kilgore Slaymame, an exalted hero of Khorne. All reward characters grant their army an incredibly powerful boon that twists their battle profile to align closer to the Dark God's ideal forces. For example, Azric's forces enjoy access to barriers, magical weapons, and global winds of magic generation benefits. If you've just had the terrifying realization that we didn't say where the Iceforged Legion went, don't worry. Your favorite Hell Cannon battery has become a regular Regiment of Renown unit that unlocks once you reach the appropriate level. And for their commandments. Being fully settled and capable of holding provinces all over the world, Norska has a full set of commandments to enact over them and solidify their new holdings. For their resources, wine, furs, and everything in between, Norska can now construct buildings to exploit almost all resources for local or global bonuses. Then capital targets. With new forces of order come new cities to raise for unique benefits. The Kurgan hordes have never taken Wei Zhen, but perhaps they only lacked a unifying iron fist. To tie us off, let's head off the question on everyone's minds. No, this is not the Norska rework. These changes are about freeing Norska from the shackles of their outposts and giving them a taste of the fresh powers of the Dark Gods in Warhammer 3. Like the rest of Immortal Empires, this is just the beginning, the foundation upon which to build and make future tweaks to different factions. And that's it for now. All these changes are very good tweaks. We knew there would be reworks coming down the line, but these will definitely help keep these factions feeling fresh and viable. I'm really looking forward to seeing how Lord Skrulk is going to be improving, especially with Gorok now being able to fully negate his poison. Take to the comments and let me know which faction you're going to be starting your first Immortal Empires campaign with. I am going to be going John Wick all over Chaos with Oxyotl the second it goes live. Thank you for your viewership on the video today. I have been Space Wizard Total War. I'd appreciate if you leave a like and even subscribe if you enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you on the next one.